God bless everybody today. It's November 13th of 2020, and we're going to do a quick current event update. You can always find my videos and articles on my eschatology page at End of Day Survival at endofdaysurvival.com. This includes my 117 step event calendar. If you click on that, that takes you to the actual calendar itself. This calendar is extremely important in understanding how to read Revelation in the proper sequence and understanding where we are today. If you zoom in on this calendar on the top of this timeline, you realize, I believe, in my opinion, that we're in the second to third seal, or between steps 6 and 7 at this point. We will be in the second and the third seal for some time. I say when you get to the fourth seal, or death, we have to have a quarter of the earth under war, and that'll be when the Middle East is totally engulfed. Once Erdogan moves his 10 nations towards Israel and gets down into the Egyptian areas before he gets pulled back between the two seas. So I just brought this up just so you can sort of see on the timeline. I believe we are in the second and third seal. This is going to be a long durational event. We won't see this play itself completely out until the next 2 or 3 years, probably around 23, end of 23, 24. So if we look at the Syrian live map, and you can Google this, and it's just Syrian live map, it takes you to this really cool real-time map. This shows you right now that Erdogan in Turkey is shelling the whole northern area between Syria, Azerbaijan, Armenia, in Iraq. They're on the northern portion, or the very border of Iran over here. So he is literally shelling this whole northern section up here. And as I said in my dream, I believe they're going to start squeezing the Kurds down to Shush Iran. So if you zoom out on this map just a little bit, you realize that Shush Iran is around here, okay? And the Kurdish area of where this nation coexists with all these different countries is basically a pie shape that runs from here to here, okay? It's this area right here. And like I said in the dream, they're going to start wedging and squeezing these Kurds down through this funnel, and they're going to push them down to Iran. At least that's what my dream said. And I've been talking about Daniel 8 for a while, and how the Kurds have to align with Iran. And then once that occurs, Turkey will come down and crush both these nations, and that will basically take Iran off the map, change the geopolitical structure of the world at that point, and Turkey will absorb Afghanistan and Iran, and the Kurds all basically all at the same time. So just sort of keep an eye on this front. It's an important front. I think the Syrian live map does a really good job to show current events as they're happening today. Every one of these things you can click on, you can see what's actually happening over here. If you click on that article, it really doesn't give you much more information, but you can go on to these different things and sort of see what's literally happening in real time. It even occasionally will give you warnings of what the leaders are saying. So if you zoom out, and you can also change the regions. So at the top of the map, If you select the regions, you can go to the different regions. So if you want to look at Libya or Iraq itself, or any of these different countries and what's physically happening in these countries at that very specific time, you can click on each of these locations and see what's happening there. But this is extremely important, and like I said, Turkey's having a lot of problems with their lira and a number of different things, and so the krona's really kicking in there hard right now, and so Erdogan's up against a number of different things to try to accomplish his goal in the next 2 to 3 years, but I don't believe he's going to be slowed down or stopped at this point, and he's on a mission, and his mission is to get this Ottoman Empire rebuilt by 2023 and get down to Israel by 2024. So on the coronavirus front, we're seeing a huge uptick in cases that are being reported. Testing is being accelerated. They're doing some contact tracing, but not enough to matter. If you go to the coronavirus world meter, we're at 53 million plus cases. Deaths are over 1.3 million. In general, there's a 3% mortality rate based on the equations that you use, and a lot of people are using modified equations to come up with the 0.00 whatever percent. That's not the way this actually works, and so you need to use the equations that the world organizations use, and they basically say there's about a 3% mortality rate. This has been dropping, and that's a good thing because the hospitalizations and the treatments are much, much better, and they're starting to understand the virus, but this is not going away anytime soon. You can see that the daily cases in the world have been spiking at this point. It's pretty much vertical. We're right around 600,000 cases a day. This is going to increase tremendously in the next 2 months. One of the biggest problems we're going to have over Thanksgiving are the schools that are in session. The kids are going to come back home, and they're going to bring a lot of the virus into the homes, and that's going to affect a lot of the homes. But we're walking into flu season in the next month also. And so in the next 2 months to about the middle of January, we're going to start to see this really inflame and uptick. Even the mortality rate on the daily deaths is starting to tick up. But you can see this is not going away. This has to flatten out. For this to start to get a handle, for the world to get a handle on this, even with the vaccinations, because it's going to take potentially years to get these vaccinations, if people want to take them, to really affect the situation, or even to have some type of herd immunity go through. This is going to take time. This is not an overnight thing, and regardless of whether Biden gets in or not, he is not going to take a magic wand and remove the virus. Biden's not going to make any difference here. And probably is going to make it worse, because Trump's trying to do what he can to speed up the vaccinations. There is some trials and things coming out with vaccinations here in the next month or two, but that won't be for mass distribution. This will be for first line defenders and different things like that, people that really need it on the first, on the front line, medical workers, different things like that. But if you go into the real numbers, this still is a 3% death rate, and I believe this is going to start to spike. And so if you look at the global situation, everybody's locking down. Greece is locking down, the UK is locking down. You get into all these different countries, France, Germany, United States. In general, they're trying to put a control method down because, especially in our situation, we're moving into flu season here in the next 2 months. And there's going to be a huge uptick between now and the middle of January once we start to work into flu season. And with the kids coming home for Thanksgiving, that potentially is going to infect a lot of the households and different things like that. I believe we're going to see a major uptick in the next month to 2 months, with a peak around January, middle of January, end of January, and then we'll start to see this start to fall off again. You may see another uptick in April because there's always a little bit of a wave of flu at the very end of the season, in January, February. So like I say, there's about a 5-week peak where we start to see this thing peak and then decline. But every time it starts to decline, we either open up the economy or something, which we have to do. We can't shut the whole thing down and expect us to survive as a country or a nation, or other countries have to survive also. We have to have economies. So it's a hard game to understand how to lock this down, deal with the hot spots, allow the economies to open back up where it's not a problem, hope everybody places the right protocols in place so they can keep the economies running and we don't have to keep locking areas down, and in hope that within the next 6 months we can gain some tractions with the vaccinations so that people can start to have some normality in life again. But with 600 plus thousand daily cases, I've been talking about this for a while, you could see potentially 1 million cases a day easily, potentially up to 5 million cases a day once this inflames. And so if you take that on a monthly basis, we're going to start to see this really take off here. And this is why I keep trying to tell people, don't jump to conclusions on where we are in this virus until it's over. You don't know where we're going to end up. And do not marginalize this disease until we get a handle on how to control it. Once that control method's in place and this epidemic sort of goes away, this pandemic goes away, then we can all talk about, how bad it was. But right now, this is just starting. The second wave is coming. Next 2 months is, you just better get ready for the ride because it's going to get ugly here. And if you haven't been stocking up your supplies, you need to do this. Once this thing starts to log down, we're already starting to hear about shortages. They're starting to, only give you so many items of a certain, toilet paper and different things like that. You may not be able to find it, or they're going to limit you with what you can get. So you need to buy these things over time. You need to be friendly on your pocketbook, as you might be having money troubles, but you also have to put that oil in the lamp, and so you need to go out and, like I say, I look at these things. You have to have about 2 gallons of water per person a day. It's that simple. You have to have 2,000 calories per person per day. You have to consider warmth. Maybe the grid will go down. If people get infected and they can't get to work, some of these services and stuff may start to get a little bit spotty. So you want to make sure that all these things are in place. So warm warm clothes, hygiene, things you want to think about, medicines. You've got to make sure all these things are in place. And if you haven't been doing any spiritual prepping as well as normal prepping, then probably you're not going to do very well when this finally breaks and you don't have the options to go out as you do now and get your oil in your lamp. So, like I say, this is going to start to spike. We're going to start to see potentially 30 to 50 million or higher levels a month in infections. And this is just not going to go anyway anytime soon. And yes, there is some good hope in that potentially they have some vaccinations coming up. But with 8 billion people on the planet, this is going to take time. Even if they came up with a vaccination today, it would take potentially years to get this through the whole system. So this is a interesting place, and I just want you to be aware that the next 2 months is going to be a really harsh time. And I'm not going to go too deep into the election side. Trump still has a road to victory. It's going to come down to the lawyers at this point. It's going to end up in the Supreme Court. One or two Supreme Court judges have actually brought themselves into this conversation. And so anytime you bring a Supreme Court justice into a conversation, they must see some merit in potential problems. And we are seeing potential problems. You can go out and look at the reports. There's a lot of people that did some underhanded things to try to manipulate the votes, the Dominion voting systems that are actually a system that they put in place in a lot of these different counties that either changed votes from Trump to Biden. There was a potential 3% discrepancy in the vote ratios of votes themselves, where they were manipulated by 3%, so Trump got less votes. We're starting to see hand counts in Pennsylvania. They're doing a recount in Georgia. So there's a lot of different things going on. They've got certain dates that they have to do this. I believe December 14th is the main date where they have to certify. So they're working on a timeline. Hand counts do take time. They get a little messy, and unless they're verifying signatures and things like that, these are not going to be the best count systems and how to go about this, because a lot of things are going to fall through the cracks, and they're going to have to count these votes fairly quickly and within a time frame before certification. So we'll see how that goes. A lot of contested things are happening. If the Dominion system is a problem, which was the voting system that they put in place to tally the votes in a lot of these counties, and so it depends on how far into the systems the Dominion tentacles go, and how many states they're in, how many counties they're in, how many of these people that did bad behavior are going to be prosecuted. These are felonies. Anytime you do election tampering, these are felonies. There are strict prosecution type things that they're going to do to these people. There's fines, there's jail time, there's different things like that. So, people that are voting, that supposedly moved to a state, vote, and aren't really from that state within 30 days or whatever the statutory limits of the state are for those, because each state's built on their own systems. And so you have to follow the statutory laws or bylaws of that state for those election cycles. Pennsylvania also had an overturning. I believe they're going to overturn where they extended the time that the votes could come in. So all these things are going to play out. Don't let people steer you away that there isn't potentially a path for Trump. This is over, and we shouldn't try to get all the votes counted, and that we shouldn't actually purge this system. And I've been talking about this for a while. If you're having this many voter problems in especially Democratic states, and there are some problems in Republican states also, because they're run by, some of these counties, cities and things are run by Democratic governors mayors and different things like that. They're also going to have problems within these red states also. So I've been talking about purging the system. I believe there's enough problems in these states that they're auditing, and I believe they are going to audit Pennsylvania also to verify, just because there's that much really bad things going on in that state. Anytime you stop a vote count in the middle of the night on an election day, that right there should send red flags and tell people volumes that something's going on, because this just doesn't occur. So I believe that the system will correct itself. I hope and pray to God that Trump will be the new elected president and have 4 more years, because like I've said, if we get Biden in there, they still have the majority of the House. They still potentially, depending on how these elections pan out, could control the Senate or have them a basic even power structure there, with the vice president potentially having the last vote. And we're going to start to see more of a blue control if the White House is taken over, and this could potentially really accelerate our decline here in this country. Another thing that I thought was somewhat interesting is there was a 7.0 earthquake off of the coast of Greece and Turkey on October 30th of 2020, and I was talking about that blue moon event on October 31st, so I don't know if that's an omen to anything coming or not, but it's just sort of an interesting coincidence that there was a major earthquake off Turkey right before the blue moon on October 31st. And if things weren't bad enough, today is Friday the 13th, so that ought to tell you something right there. So I just wanted to cover a few of the current events that are happening around Turkey and the Middle East and the global corona and some different things. But God bless everybody. Realize that the narrow, thin door is Jesus. You have to repent. The only way to the Creator is through the Son. And so get right with the Lord. Let people know around you what's happening. We need to get people on the same page. I think it's important that we understand the sequence of events so that we can understand where we are in the end days, and what's coming up in the next few years. So be safe out there, get right with God, and God bless everyone.